Welcome back to Man Crossing New Horizons. I'm Dear Darling, as you will see what's going on our lovely island of Fawnhollow today. Well, we'll be... Well, I was going to... For some reason, I was going to be like, we're doing a Happy Home Paradise customization. No, we're not. Today's Thursday. No, we're clearly not going to be doing that. We are going to just be vibing out as per usual in New Horizons style, talking about whatever. GCSE results day. For those of you who are doing GCSEs, congratulations. I mean, I'm not going to do the whole results day thing again. If you want to say sort of my like long and short of basically what I say about it, go back a week ago when I did results day for A levels specifically. The same sort of thing applies to GCSE. But anyway, hey everyone. Right now in Fawnhallow, it's 4:59 PM on Thursday, August 25th, 2022. I mean, I don't know if I have any GCSE stories really or that interesting. GCSEs were quite a while ago for me now. Well, I say quite a while ago. It was only 7 years, which to be fair. If you're younger than me, you might be like, oh, that's a really long time. If you're older than me, you'll be like, that's nothing. And to be fair, you're right. You're right in both cases, you know. Time is relative, and as I say, I mean, the thing that really puts it best in perspective is, you know, like 7 years for me would be... Hold on, how old am I? I'm 25. Oh, no, I'm not 25. I'm almost 25. So, what's 7 over 25? I should know this. It's like 3.5 or something. So, what, 1 over 3.5 or something like that. So, you know, it's like 2 over 7. Oh, September 2nd, we celebrate my birthday. I didn't even think about my birthday is so close. That's honestly crazy to think about. I don't know what I'd be doing for it. But anyway, the thing which I think sort of enlightens it most is how like 7 years of my life is probably like less than a quarter of my life. More. I can't even remember. Slightly more than a quarter of my life. But you know, when you hit like 50 or something, that's like about a seventh of your life or something, you know. But the time frames get smaller. And honestly, like it's a thing which you always hear about when you start getting older from, you know, people older than you, because, you know, they were young too once. It's a hard thing to remember sometimes. But how ages, like, you know, the difference obviously between you being 8 and you being 9 is like huge when you're at that age, but then like the differences between when you're like 16 and 17 is like that's kind of similar at that point. No, you know, there's still marked difference, especially here in the UK. You'd be like doing GCSEs still starting like sixth form, and then like the differences between me being like 23 and 24, like really not that big a difference. It's basically the same sort of thing. I mean, I'm a bit older, like, but you know, there's still at least market differences between like bigger year gaps, like me right now almost 25 to me 21. That's a pretty big difference. I would say I'm a rather big there's a rather big difference from who I was back then to who I am now, in a good way of course, not in a bad way. But the years start blurring together, and you know, it's equal parts sort of like intimidating and like scary, but equal parts also sort of like reassuring to a certain extent. But you know, the years will just sort of start blurring together, and it's just like how it is. You know, like what's going to be the difference between me being at like, you know, when I hit like 52 and me being 57? Probably like nothing at that point. It's probably going to be like exactly the same, or maybe not exactly the same, but you know, most of like the growth obviously through my life has, you know, kind of stopped. Hopefully, you know, by then I've kind of like really sorted out who I am, who, you know, what drives me, what my priorities are in life. You know, maybe like with family, maybe not with family, depending on how things go. Who knows? I don't know what the cards hold for me. But by that time, you know, not much really changes between who you are. You know, not many people, you know, most of the development, I suppose, you go throughout your life. Well, I mean, people are always changing and developing, of course, but the big development are always often in your earlier years. You know, obviously physically is quite a big one, you know, going through like puberty, etc. And, you know, being like, you know, when you're a baby to when you're like a toddler, you know, developing your brain and all that sort of thing. All those changes usually kind of already happened by like I mean, if anything, I guess you're starting the decline, unfortunately to say, from 50, when, you know, you start needing to be more conscious about like your physical well-being, you know, make sure you're taking care of your back, you know, your dental health or whatever, because things will, you know. And I'm not going to say like things are going to get harder. Things always get harder. Some things get harder, some things get easier as, you know, time goes on. But the years certainly probably start to blur together. I mean, I'm not going to speak as if I am 50, because I'm not 50. I can't. But I feel like that's something you can't really say for certain until, you know, you reach that age, because especially you might have like a big like tumultuous event. Well, tumultuous gives like bad connotations. You might have some like huge thing which happens to you when you're 50. Like, I don't know, maybe you become a grandparent. Maybe you move to a different country, you know, maybe, you know, 55 you retire. Wait, 65 is retiring age, isn't it? But I don't know, maybe you worked really hard and you retired early. I don't know. Who knows what, you know, the future holds for you, to be perfectly honest. It's basically the long and short of what I'm trying to say. No one does. But it's a sort of thing where it's weird to think about, because I'm putting myself back into like my younger perspective, being like, oh man, I feel like every year is going to feel so different like it does now. And then like me being like, I'm only 25, I'm being like, I don't really feel that different from 24. Like I said that when I was like 22 or like 21 as well. I've been like, I don't really feel that different from, actually maybe 21's not the right age, because that's when I graduated uni, I think. So but I did actually feel markedly different. But like 23 to 22, I was like, I think that was the first notable year where I was like, that didn't feel like a year happened, you know? Like I guess it's just sort of like the peppering of your youth. It's full of like really big things which end up happening. Of course, you know, being born, that's a big thing. You know, babies change a huge amount from like in the first year, you know, because like a 1 month old can't like obviously just like do anything. It just sort of sits there and cries because, you know, it's a very vulnerable part of its life. And then, you know, a 6 month old can at least sort of like sit up. Can it sit up, or is it like it can like sort of like crawl around? Maybe, I don't know. Maybe that's a bit too young. And maybe like 1 month old is when they start like speaking somewhat, like, you know, very broken sort of noises and sentences. It'll be like blah, 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 or something like that, you know. That's huge development. That's huge progress on being just like, I suppose, a tiny embryo. Well, no, I guess you're not the embryo when you're 0 years old, but from being a tiny baby or up to like a creature with some level of sort of like interactability, I suppose. That's such like a robotic way of describing children, which is not what I meant, but you know what I mean. Basically, like there's some. It's probably when you start being like, okay, yeah, I can actually sort of interface with my child rather than being like the sole caretaker. And then, you know, you get to like the second and third years. Second year, they start walking about a bit. Third year, I don't really know what developments happen in third year, but fourth year, I believe, is when this is what I heard, is 4 years old is when you basically start sort of like cementing your personality. It was like when the personality traits which will probably stick with you for the rest of your life is when that's around the sort of age it starts to emerge out, which, you know, I don't know. And I never actually asked my parents about that. What I was like when I was 4 years old. I'm curious to what they say, because I obviously don't remember myself much from 4 years old. But yeah, I mean, I think 3 years old, 3 or 4 years old is when you start like developing like solid memories, I suppose, and as a person. Obviously, depending on your age, you might not remember much from when you're 3 and 4, but, you know, a lot of people's earliest memories tend to be around that sort of age. You might be like, what's your earliest memory, dear darling? My earliest memory is when I was 2 years old at my 2-year birthday party. That I had with my family, ate some noodles, had a caterpillar cake. It was great, I think. I mean, I was 2, I don't really remember that much of it. And then, you know, of course, you get like big developments all the way from year 5. And I keep saying year 5, and makes it sound like grade 5. From year 5 years old up to like 11, because you know, that's your primary school life. Every year feels really different, you know. Like the first, you know, like reception or kindergarten year, you know, starting to actually getting introduced to other people. In your first year, when you start like it feels like your first like formal start to your academic, you know, career. The second year is when it's sort of like a midway point in your like primary school conversations. It's the difference between Key Stage 1 and Key Stage 2, at least in the UK. I don't know how delineations go in America, but that's like a big thing. I mean, year 3 is, you know, you start your Key Stage 2 life, and you get year 4 is when you're starting to, you know, it's that when you're becoming like an older child, I suppose. And year 5 and year 6 is when you know, you're starting to like, you are an old child now, and you're, you know, year 6 you're starting to think of like going into secondary school and all that good stuff, like high school. No, middle school for America. I think how conversions work, and I always mess them up in my head, but yeah, you'll start going to like your next school. Then, you know, year 7, this is the first year of that school, and year 8 and year 9, to be fair, year 8 and year 9 kind of blend together, like quite closely. Like year 8 basically feels like year 7 plus, but year 9 is sort of like year 10 minus, which is obvious to say, but what I mean by that is sort of like year 8 is sort of just like you're doing, year 7's like the induction year, and year 8 is sort of like, oh, you know, now you're a bit more comfortable. You start getting rhythm things, and year 9 is sort of like, oh, this is your lead into GCSE, and year 10 is sort of like, get ready for your GCSEs. Year 11 is like, this is your GCSE year. Year 12 is like, get ready for your A-levels. Year 13 is like, this is your A-level year. And then, like, you know, first year of uni, you'd be like, this is, well, not necessarily university, maybe you go straight into trade work or whatever, but still, that's obviously, you know, when you're 18, 19, that's a pretty big moment. And then, of course, each year of university is very different. Like, you know, the first year is always really hectic. You're as they say, a freshman or freshers in UK. I think they're also called freshmen in America, so I don't know why I'm trying to do this like UK translation thing. You understand basically just what I'm saying, even if I use my British parlance. It's sort of like your first year in university, and you're just sort of like getting used to things. You're like, this is the first year, like baby steps into your like your adult world. The second year, you're getting pretty used to things. The third year, you're like, okay, now I've got to start to think about my future. Like, am I going to stay on to do a master's? Do I want to like study for a PhD? Am I going to go start working? What am I going to study? Like, these are like the big choices. And then the third year is like, all right, time to execute on that. And then like for me personally, I like graduated by that point, but other people might not have. But that's when you're properly into adult life. You might be like, you don't necessarily feel like an adult, and that's actually a very interesting point. At what age do you really start feeling like an adult? And you might, be curious to ask me, because you're an adult, technically, by legal definitions, of course I am, when did you start feeling like an adult? I don't know, because it's weird. For me personally, I sort of started feeling like I was an adult, like when I was 17 or 18-esque. But, of course, when I turned like 19 and 20, and I look back on it and realised like, I wasn't an adult then. And then, of course, I turned 22, 23, 24, 25, look back at my 20-year-old self and be like, I wasn't an adult then. And probably be the same sort of thing, I'll look back when I'm like 32 or 34 or something, I'll be thinking back to this moment and be like, yeah, I wasn't really an adult then. So now I sort of like have, at least, after going through it a few times, have a sort of sense of self-awareness where I'm just like, I don't know. I feel like I'm an adult of my age right now, but do I feel like a proper adult yet? I don't really know when you ever start like feeling like a proper adult. I guess it it depends on really what you define an adult as. Is it going to be like when you first start working, start earning that salary, start getting paid for doing something? Is it when you graduate? Is it immediately like that marks the end of your like academic career? That's your like step into adult life? Is it when you graduated secondary school or high school? I don't know, because you could technically start working then. Is it when you bought your first car? Is it when you had your first relationship? Is it when you first moved into a house? Is it when you first like achieved you like a really high salary? I don't know. Everyone's got their own sort of different definitions, and to be honest, I don't really think there is much of a way of an answer. And thinking about my demographics, I kind of have like a bimodal demographics where a lot of my demographic is quite young, so they're like in teenage years, I think, who watch me, or they're like much older than me. Like, I think a majority of people who watch me are in a younger demographic, but there's still like a decent amount of people who watch me who are significantly older as well, which is fair enough, I like to think I'm rather all ages appealing, but I don't know, it's a bit weird sort of like directly talk to both in that way, because obviously what I want to say to people who are younger than me would be like, don't even worry about it, don't sweat about it. You're still young, I'm still young, I've got my whole life ahead of me. Life is full of like infinite possibilities. You don't know exactly where things are going to end up. Things are going to go up, things are going to go down, and you're sort of just here along with it. Life is defined by the way you make it, rather than it doesn't have to necessarily be solely defined by the events which happen around you. You have to a certain extent control on your life. Obviously things just happen, but how you respond to it, I suppose, is really what ends up defining you in the end. So don't even worry about it. It's scary. It's scary becoming an adult, but becoming an adult is a long process in the first place, and there's no really end point. It's just, if anything, you just legally become an adult, but who you are as a person, that's sort of like an ongoing process, right? But then also, oh, sorry, just like punched my microphone. I didn't mean to walk on there. I'm reserved. No one ever sits here. I'm saying, Brewster. You should also put like reserve signs on the things. I'm just also pointing that out. But what would I ask to like, I don't know, like the 40-year-olds, 50-year-olds, 60-year-olds who might be watching these videos? I don't know. Do you sort of like concur with my statements? Do you like look back on when you were younger, being like, what was I so worried about? Or look back on the youth of this generation, being like, don't even sweat it, don't even worry about it. Things will go absolutely swimmingly. Things will be fine. You got your whole life ahead of you. I mean, it's a thing I hear a lot, because oftentimes it's easy to be caught up in like regret and mistakes that you've done in the past or whatever. Okay, I guess I do say this from a rather privileged position where I haven't made like any colossal mistakes. Like I haven't, I don't know, completely done like massive mistakes. But for the average person, from even like these colossal mistakes, which feel like colossal mistakes, a lot of times aren't really colossal mistakes. And of course I'm saying this in sort of like a vicinity of like a results day. Especially with like bad grades or grades which weren't exactly what you hoped for. See the video I made like a week ago about A-level results and that sort of thing, which, you know, is applicable to his situation. I think it's very easy to get caught up when you're in the moment, being like, oh, this is like, this is something I truly regret. Like, I can't believe I've done this. Like, you know, I don't know, like, well, why didn't I study harder in school? Why didn't I take better, you know, care of myself? Why didn't I, you know, start doing this sort of thing immediately? It's very easy to get caught up in, like, these sort of cycles of regret and disdain for yourself, when really it's, really, I guess it's, things aren't like that, you know? But your life, you have a long life ahead of you. Like, I mean, like right now, if you're a teenager, you have a huge amount of your life ahead of you. When you might be in your mid-20s like me, you still have a really long time of your life ahead of you. Even in your 30s and 40s, you still got a pretty long time ahead. You know, 20 years is still a pretty long time. And that's only up to until the time you retire, to be honest. Like, you have still, like, all of your life after you retire as well. You know, what are you going to do with it? What are you setting yourself up for? What truly matters to you in the end? Like, a lot of these regrets, you know, I suppose I take comfort with the fact that as I get older, I'll look back at the regrets and things that trouble me at the moment and be like, there's no use troubling over them. They really are quite insignificant in the end of the day, you know? And if anything, I suppose it already kind of happens, you know, the things I like sort of worry about when I'm like a teenager, you know, looking back at like my 15-year-old self, being like, I wonder if I should have done more GCSEs. I wonder if I should have, you know, studied this. I wonder if I should have taken different subjects. I wonder if I, you know, what if I started learning programming when I was like 12 years old? Maybe I'd be like an absolute whiz now. It doesn't really matter, you know. Could have started then. Yeah, as the saying goes, the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. Second best time is right now. Things happen, time passes. Yeah, okay, maybe things could have gone, life could have gone absolutely perfectly if you done things exactly, you know, like by the textbook way or whatever. But you know, that's not how things go. You're not perfect. We're not perfect. No one's perfect. You got to make these mistakes to be able to learn of them. And yeah, I guess that's kind of like the main thing I want to say is like, it feels really reassuring. So just like imagining like 50-year-old me thinking back to, you know, like 25-year-old me right now and just like sort of laughing, being like, what on earth was dear darling so worried about at that time? It's so pointless, you know. And then, you know, I think about like 50-year-old me and like the worries I sort of have then, and I think about 70-year-old me looking back at 50-year-old me being like, oh, it's all good now, you know. I mean, I suppose that's why there's a sort of reputation of like, especially elderly people being so sort of like laissez-faire and like so relaxed about things. Obviously, not always true, you know, dependent on the person in the end, but it's just sort of like, by the time you get to that age, you'll be like, they've made so many mistakes, they've done so many good things, bad things, they've seen it all. Of course, you know, that's the sort of attitude you take. You now have a context of everything. You're no longer restricted by like the state of your own experience or anything. You've now seen it all. You know what things matter to you. You know what things don't, and thus, you know, with that, a lot of burdens sort of get released at the same time. You know, when you're 12, you have a limited scope of like what matters and what doesn't. But as you get older and older, you know, the more experience you get, the more you start to realise what actually ends up mattering and what doesn't. So yeah, I don't know. I guess it sort of just goes into the phrase of, you know, age gracefully rather than kicking and screaming. You'll have many different sort of like milestones and whatever in your life, you know. You might as well gracefully age into each and every one rather than, you know, trying to fight the nature of things. But that doesn't mean, you know, of course you're defined by these sort of boundaries, arbitrary boundaries, which end up happening in the first place, you know. If you regret, like, never, you know, like, it's quite common, we're never like learning a musical instrument from a young age. Just start now, why not? Find the time to do it. Obviously that's, you know, easier said than done. Not everyone's just going to be able to just, you know, go out to the store and be like, oh, I'm going to, you know, buy a clarinet and learn how to play it. You know, you've got to have to organise time to be able to like practice it, rehearse it, you know. You got to find the fundings for your like music lessons, the actual music instrument itself. It's not always easy, but you know, you can do it, I think. I don't know your life experience, I don't know like your life situation right now, but you know, life finds a way. If not now, eventually. I think you could probably work it out, you know. It's never too late, I suppose, to essentially learn skills like that, you know. I often think about how when I like properly started drawing as well, you know, I often did like small little doodles, but I never really committed a lot of time to properly learn how to like, you know, draw or anything like that until really, I think it was during university time. I actually spent, you know, got a tablet. I actually got a tablet before that, but like I never really spent time drawing, but you know, started drawing a little bit more and more and more and more. And now, you know, here I am like 6 years on. Would I say I have 6 years of experience? No, not really, because I haven't been drawing obviously all the time every single day or anything like that. But, you know, I certainly have a lot more experience than if I didn't do it at all. And it's something that, you know, I feel accomplished now. I'm happy with like my abilities. I'm excited to see where else I can go, and that basically just sort of applies to everything. It's a bit easier to make a sort of like the drawing comparison though, because that's actually something I did start quite, later in my current life rather than, I'm not going to say late in my life because late in my life is like 60s, I suppose, but late in my current life, I started in my 20s, I suppose, rather than actually from a particularly young age. So yeah, I don't know, I guess growing older is kind of exciting in the same way that it is kind of scary, as many things, I mean, of course, a very common one for when you're not an adult is when you kind of want to go older because you're like, I can't wait to be an adult because, being able to have that sort of freedom, being able to like take time away from not having to like report, you get to decide, I suppose, your own life of the way things go for you, etc., etc. You're no longer beholden to, you are still beholden to rules, let's be real, but not like beholden to, your parents' guidance or like, school, teachers, etc., etc. You are sort of, you dictate how things can go for you. And it is exciting, being able to have that freedom as an adult is awesome. But also, obviously, it comes with deficits as well. You get far more responsibilities that you have to start thinking about. You obviously have to think about, I don't know, I always feel like it's very patronising when people say real world problems. Because I understand where it's coming from, but it's also sort of like, I feel like diminishing the sort of struggles that teenagers and younger go through. It's not like that they can't also have issues, and it's not like their issues are trivial or anything like that, but I suppose that the reassuring thing is that they probably become personally, well, depending on the issue of course, but a lot of them end up being personally quite trivial in the end, as you yourself mature, as you yourself gain your like new insights and perspectives. That's the exciting part, I suppose. But yeah, no, I mean, I don't mean to say it in a way that intends to dismiss anyone who's younger than me and who's facing issues or troubles right now or worries. They are valid. And just sort of rest assured that you'll get through them, you'll sort them out one way or another, certainly, and you'll be able to look back on it and smile, laugh, or at least be at peace with it. Yeah, maybe not necessarily smile or laugh because that's not very applicable to everything, but you'll be at peace with what happens. And I think that's one of the more important things, to be able to sort of like kick back and relax at something, being like, yeah, that's just how it is. Hello, Raymond. You want to move? Sorry, I'm never allowed to move. Don't go. Let me have a sip of water if you don't mind. But yeah, I don't know. Because it's sort of thing, like, I can remember being younger and an adult being like, I can't wait to grow older, Actually, ironically, when I was very young, I wanted to stay very young forever. I remember having a conversation with my mum being like, oh, I wish I could stay 3 years old forever. Obviously, that's not something which happens, and, I'm kind of glad I didn't stay 3 years old forever, I like the things which come when you get older, Do I miss things from my childhood? Of course. I guess to a certain extent, I do miss the carefreeness. But I wouldn't trade that carefreeness. I managed to, that part of my life is done. It's over. I'm happy with how it went. Did it go perfectly? Did it go smoothly? Of course not. But I'm happy with the carefreeness. I'm happy with my childhood and how things gone. And if there's anything which I ever find like missing from my childhood, being like, oh, I never got to do that, never got to try that, I can always just do it now as an adult. It's not sort of like a missed opportunity, as it's so. More is my opportunity in the first place, right? Obviously, the things I'm saying is not going to be, like, broad strokes applicable to literally everyone. There's going to be, of course, nuances. Things that I'm not sort of accustomed to talk about, because I don't want to sort of, like, stand up here and, like, trying to give out, like, general life advice or anything, which, life advice should be specific to the situation. But, I guess sort of just, like, yeah, I don't know. Where I'm really going with this, it's not miscoherent thought. It's just sort of like life is what happened, for good and for worse. I don't regret it. Well, it would have been great if some things could have changed, some things could have been adjusted, some things could have been happened differently. Yeah, certainly. No, I'm not going to stand up here, like stand on my soapbox, stand on my virtual soapbox, and pretend that I did everything optimally through my life or anything like that, but I enjoyed it, I suppose. is the long and short of it. And I wouldn't trade my life now for what I had back then. because, you know, while I've got new responsibilities, new worries and all that sort of thing, I, you know, also get new unique benefits, I suppose, from being an adult, that sort of thing. And, you know, maybe that's a similar conversation I'll be thinking when I was like, when I'll be 30 or 40. I'd be like, would I trade my life now for my 20-year-old self? Well, maybe I want to trade my physical health. Possibly, depending on what my physical health is like at that point. Maybe I want to trade some certain things, but, you know, it's sort of a package deal, I guess, is what I mean to say. You know, it's easy to look back at your childhood and be like, oh, you know, there's carefree responsibilities, but it's also like, oh, you know, no independence, you have no experience, you basically know nothing. Is that sort of like worth a trade? I don't really know. I suppose, you know, your mileage may vary depending on the sort of things you like in life, and I don't think I can really give you an answer, but at the end of the day, then, you know, we all age, we all get older, so I suppose my perspective on these sort of things is just sort of like to try and age into it gracefully, to try and like be one with how it happens, rather than trying to fight or go against it necessarily, and then end up being stewed in regret and pain from what could have, what would have, and what should have been, because, you know, you can't really change that now. Instead, we just have a future to look forward to. I don't know. I guess this is much more of like a sort of like, but you know, the Animal Crossing videos, they always fall into like one of three categories. One, talk about, you know, some media thing I've consumed recently. Two, talk about, you know, anecdotal stories from my childhood. And three, talk about very sort of like whimsical philosophical ideas. Or like the life advice section, I suppose. Which I suppose is quite ironic with me giving like any sort of life advice being 25. You know, there's only so much I can really give. But I keep saying I'm 25. I'm not 25 yet. You know, I guess in about a week I'll be 25. But still, that's just kind of how it goes. So yeah, I'm going to round off this episode here. So if you haven't been watching, thank you very much. It's been Animal Crossing New Horizons. I've been Dear Darling. Any likes, comments, subscription, shares are greatly appreciated. Join my Dear Darling Discord, follow me on Twitter down below. Hope to see each other again. But for now, it's our farewell. So until next time, bye bye for now.